Silas Thorne sat on his gelding, watching the clouds bruise into a deep, angry purple over the ridge. Silas was 60, with a face like a dried creek bed and eyes that had seen too much of the Civil War to ever truly sleep soundly again. He lived alone on a patch of dirt that mostly grew rocks and resentment. He liked it that way. But that evening, the mountain gave him something he didn't want. He saw the wagon first, a small black buckboard. Its rear wheel snapped like a dry twig, tilted precariously near the edge of a 500-foot drop. No horses. They'd been cut loose or had bolted. And there, huddled in the driver's seat, was a woman. She wasn't dressed for the Sierras. She wore a thin, silk travel dress the color of wood smoke, now tattered and stained with mountain mud. Her hands were bone white, clutching a heavy, iron-bound trunk in the back of the wagon, like it was the only thing keeping her on this earth. Silas dismounted. His joints popped, a rhythmic reminder of too many years in the saddle. He approached slowly, careful, the way you approach a trapped animal that's forgotten how to bite and only knows how to tremble. "The storm's coming," Silas said. His voice was a low growl and used the weight of words. "I don't care about your secrets, lady. I care about my toes not freezing off. Let's go." He expected her to move. Instead, she lunged to the trunk. It was heavy, too heavy for a woman of her size. It thudded onto the muddy trail with a sound of dead weight, metal hitting stone. "The trunk comes," she said. It wasn't a request. It was the last stand of a woman who had nothing else left to lose. Silas sighed, the steam of his breath vanishing into the biting air. He heaved the trunk onto his horse, feeling the animal shift under the unexpected mass. He swung the woman up behind him. She was light, too light, like she'd been running for weeks on nothing but fear and prayer. The cabin smelled of cedar, old grease, and the cold silence of a man who lived alone. Silas built the fire in the stone hearth. He didn't do it for comfort. He did it because the wood was an enemy he knew how to defeat. The woman sat on the edge of his cot. Her name, she eventually muttered, was Clara. She wouldn't take off her cloak. She wouldn't let her eyes leave that trunk, which now sat in the center of the room like an uninvited guest. Silas made coffee. It was bitter, strong enough to peel paint, and smelled of wood smoke. He handed her a tin cup. Their fingers brushed. Hers were like marble, cold and unyielding. "You're running from something," Silas said, sitting across from her at the scarred oak table. He started cleaning his Colt .44. It was a ritual. The click of the cylinder, the smell of the oil. It was the only language he felt comfortable speaking. Clara took a sip of the coffee. She winced but didn't stop. "The world is full of things worth running from, Mr. Thorne." "Usually," Silas nodded, "but people don't haul 100 pounds of iron-bound secret over a mountain pass, unless that secret is worth more than their life." Clara looked at the trunk. "It's not gold, if that's what you're thinking." "Gold is easy," Silas said. "Gold you can spend. Secrets just spend you." Clara stood by the window, looking out at the moonlit snow. "Why haven't you asked to open it?" she asked. Silas didn't look up from the leather strap. He was punching, because once a man knows the truth, he's responsible for it. "I've carried enough responsibility for 3 lifetimes. Clara, I'm quite happy being ignorant." She turned to him. "The sheriff in Willow Creek. He's not a man of the law. He's a man of the hunt." Silas paused. His thumb traced a notch on his holster. He knew the type. The West was littered with men who used a star to hide a black heart. If you're still listening to this story, it means you know that in the Old West, a man's silence was often his only shield. You're like Silas. You know that trouble doesn't knock. It just waits for the fire to burn low. If you want to see how Silas Thorne handles a storm that's about to ride up his trail, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below telling me. If you were Silas, would you have opened that trunk on the first night? Now, let's get back to the mountain. The 4th morning broke with the sun, so bright it hurt to look at the snow. But it wasn't the sun that woke Silas. It was a vibration, a rhythmic thumping that didn't belong to the wind. Hoofbeats, many of them. Silas stood, moving to the gun rack with fluidity that belied his age. He grabbed his Winchester. He didn't look at Clara, who was now standing in the corner, her face the color of the ash in the hearth. "They're here," she whispered. "He's here. Go to the cellar," Silas said. "There's a crawl space behind the potato crates. Don't make a sound unless you hear leather hitting the floor." "Silas." "Go." He watched her disappear beneath the floorboards. Then he stepped out onto the porch. 3 riders were coming up the trail. They didn't ride like ranchers. They rode with the air. He pulled his horse up 10 feet from Silas's porch. The horse's breath came in great, white plumes. "Morning, Thorne," Miller said. He didn't smile. A man like Miller only smiled when someone was bleeding. "Sheriff," Silas replied. He kept the Winchester cradled in his arm. "Casual, deadly. You're a long way from Willow Creek. The taxes up here are paid in rocks, and I don't think you're interested in geology." Miller chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "I'm looking for a thief, Silas. A woman stole something of great value from the county vault, broke her carriage a few miles back. My trackers say she ended up here." "I don't keep many guests," Silas said. "The company is poor and the food is worse." Miller's eyes drifted past Silas, into the open door of the cabin. They landed on the trunk, sitting in the middle of the room. He went still. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. "That's a fine-looking piece of luggage, Silas. Doesn't look like it belongs to an old hermit." "Found it on the trail," Silas lied. He lied the way a soldier lies, with total conviction, and a hand on his trigger. "Figured I'd turn it in next time I went to town." Miller dismounted. His deputies stayed in their saddles, hands hovering near their holsters. Miller walked toward the porch. Each step crunched in the snow, a countdown to a gunfight. "I'll take it off your hands now," Miller said. "Save you the trip." "I think I'd rather wait for the circuit judge," Silas said. "I like to do things by the book. It prevents misunderstandings." Miller stopped at the bottom of the steps. He looked up at Silas. The mask of the lawman slipped, just for a second, and the wolf underneath peered out. "Step aside, old man. You got 1 foot in the grave. Don't make me put the other one there for you." Silas didn't move. He felt the cold iron of the Winchester. He felt the ghost of... Silas didn't fire the Winchester. He swung it. The heavy walnut stock caught Miller across the jaw, sending the sheriff spinning into the snow. The 2 deputies drew their revolvers. Crack! Crack! 2 shots rang out, not from Silas, from the cabin door. Clara was standing there, holding Silas's spare Sharps rifle. She hadn't stayed in the cellar. 1 deputy slumped over his saddle, clutching a shattered shoulder. The other's horse bolted, spooked by the roar of the big bore rifle. Silas leveled the Winchester at the downed sheriff. Miller was coughing, spitting blood into the pristine snow. "Open it," Miller wheezed. "Open the trunk, Thorne. See what you're dying for. See what she really is." Silas looked back at Clara. Her face was set in stone. She walked to the trunk. She pulled a key from a string around her neck. "I told you not to look, Silas," she said. "I told you it was a secret." "Open it, Clara," Silas said. "Let's see the monster we're dealing with." The lock clicked. The sound was deafening in the mountain air. Clara threw back the lid. Silas expected gold. He expected letters. He expected evidence of a crime. What he saw was a small leather-bound ledger, and under it, a stack of iron plates, printing plates, for currency. But it wasn't the plates that caught Silas's eye. It was the ledger. He picked it up. He flipped through the pages. It wasn't a record of money. It was a record of names. Names of every man Miller had killed. Names of the families he had burned out of their homes to take their land. It was a ledger of blood kept by Miller's own deputy, Clara's brother, before Miller had murdered him too. And there, on the last page, was a plan. Miller wasn't just a corrupt sheriff. He was working with a syndicate out of San Francisco to counterfeit the new Union notes and collapse the local economy so they could buy the territory for pennies. "You weren't hunting a thief," Silas said. His voice was as cold as the peaks above them. "You were hunting a witness." Miller looked at the ledger. He looked at the Winchester pointed at his heart. He looked at the girl he had underestimated. He didn't beg. Men like Miller don't know how to beg. They only know how to negotiate. Half, Miller choked out. The plates, the ledger, we burn it all. I'll make you a king in this territory, Thorne. You'll never have to eat rocks again. Silas looked at the silver star pinned to Miller's duster. He thought about the men who had died in the mud of the South for an idea of honor. He thought about the quiet nights in this cabin he had spent trying to forget that the world was a cruel place. You think the star makes you a lawman? Silas asked. He stepped down off the porch. He reached down and ripped the badge off Miller's chest. The fabric tore with a harsh, final sound. Silas held the badge up. Then he dropped it into the mud and the slush, where the horses had trampled the ground. The law didn't find you today, Miller, Silas said. The mountain did. Silas didn't kill him. He didn't have to. He took the riders' horses. He took their guns. He left them there, in the middle of the Sierra's winter, 10 miles from the nearest town, with nothing but the clothes on their backs. If you're as tough as you tell people in Willow Creek, Silas called out as he led the horses toward his barn, you'll make it to the valley by morning. If not, well, the coyotes have to eat too. That night, the cabin was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Silas looked at the fire. And then, I suppose I'll come back here, fix that fence, whittling some wood, maybe plant something that isn't a rock. Clara reached out and touched his hand, not like marble this time. Her hand was warm. Humans. The mountain is a lonely place, Silas, she said. It was, he replied, until it wasn't. Sometimes, the West gives you a secret you didn't want, but every now and then, it gives you a reason to stop running. Silas Thorne hadn't touched a woman's hand in 20 years, and as a fire crackled in the hearth, giving the room a heartbeat, he realized that the hardest secrets to carry aren't the ones in iron-bound trunks. They're the ones we keep from ourselves. The secret that no matter how much the world breaks you, there's always enough left to stand up and do what's right. Silas and Clara rode out the next morning. They didn't look back. The ledger was delivered. The sheriff was hung, and the West kept on turning, indifferent to the small acts of courage that held it together. But out in the Sierras, if you pass a certain cabin near the high ridge, you might see two people sitting on a porch. One is an old man with a face like a creek bed. The other is a woman with eyes like a forest after rain. They don't talk much. They don't have to. Some stories don't need words. They just need someone to stand their ground. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the secrets you carry or the people who stood by you when the storm hit, give this video a like. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next journey into the heart of the Old West. And tell me in the comments, what's one secret you'd take to the grave?